Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Holmberg, founder and mentor with InvisalignDoctors.com. It is an ongoing passion of mine to help doctors like you gain confidence and excel in treatment planning. One way I do this is through offering tutorials like the one you're about to watch.
Have you ever been confused about the widgets on the 3D control tooth movement bar? Do you understand the tooth movements associated with these widgets? Do you know how to adjust the movement values to improve the outcome predictability of your cases? Watch this video and learn how to use the tooth movement bar for your cases. So this graphic shows it right here. And you can see that there's all these icons here, and here are the descriptions of them. So there's all these tooth movements associated with Invisalign treatment. And let's go over these real quick. The top one right here is for intrusion or extrusion. This one right here is for buccal lingual translation. And I might add that translation is when both the crown of the tooth and the root apex move the same distance. This is mesial distal translation. Same thing, the crown and the root tip apex moves the same direction. Here's rotation. Right here, this is pure rotation where the center of axis is in the center of the tooth. This is mesial hinge rotation where the axis of rotation is on the mesial aspect of the tooth, not the center. This is distal hinge rotation. This is crown angulation in a mesial or distal direction. This one is root torque. Root torque is where it's a buccal lingual movement, and it's where the root apices or the root apex is repositioned in a buccal or lingual direction. This changes the inclination of the tooth. This is crown tip, where the incisal edge, if you're talking about an anterior tooth, the incisal edge remains in the same or is moved buccal or lingual, but the root apex remains in the same position. Next, I'm going to show on a live treatment plan. I'm going to demonstrate these movements. Okay, so here's a live treatment plan, and I've opened the 3D control bar right here. And let's look at tooth number 9 right here, okay? So tooth number 9, you can see that programmed into this treatment plan is 1.0 millimeters, and the eye indicates there's programmed intrusion. So if you click the left arrow, you can see this number getting less. And what's happening is the tooth is extruding closer to the level it was in the beginning. If you keep clicking this and it's at 0, this is the position the tooth was in the beginning. If you go further, now you're seeing a change of that vertical dimension. It's going to be extrusion right here. Okay, so this is intrusion, extrusion. You can click these little arrows, or you can left click and make a more aggressive move um, on that arrow that's on the tooth itself. Okay, let's look at the next one. The next one is translation. Let's go ahead and look from the occlusal view at a premolar tooth. Right now there's 0.7 millimeters of buccal movement. Okay, now that buccal movement could be also a little bit of crown tip down here. They don't really distinguish, but if you click this arrow and you add more, you are adding translation. So let's look at that translation. Let's look at it from this view. So I'm translating the tooth, and you can see that it's moving out, and you can see that there's no change in the buccal lingual inclination in this tooth because the root apex and the crown are moving the same. So that's translation. A word about translation is that usually the crowns move easier than the roots. So if you add a lot of translation to a tooth, any tooth, especially a posterior tooth, you can expect a little lag in the movement of the root apex. And what you can end up, the end result could be that you could end up with a proclined or a flared uh, angle of the tooth because all that translation didn't occur clinically. The crown moved out, but the root apex stayed slightly behind. So be careful about adding a lot of buccal or lingual translation, especially with posterior teeth. Let's look at the mesial-distal translation. The easiest way to do that is just on a posterior tooth. Again, the same thing. The tooth is moving, you know, mesial or distal direction, and both in the root apices, in this case root apices, and the crown are moving the same. Let's look at rotation. Here's right here is pure rotation. The center of axis is going to be in the center of the tooth, so that's the rotational axis right there. You see, so if you go this direction here, it's the mesial's out, the distal's in. If you go this way, opposite, distal out, mesial in. Let's look at the situation here where there's a mesial hinge rotation. In this case, you can see that the marginal ridges are lined up on the mesial, and you don't want to use pure rotation because when you use that, the mesial comes out and the distal comes in. I just want to move the distal in. So here's the axis is on a hinge. You can again left click and drag this, and you can see this movement right here. Okay, you can get it just where you want it. So it's like a door. It's a very efficient way to rotate teeth. It's like they're opening and closing a door, okay? But you can't use it always. But you do use it when you want either the mesial or distal change, but the other not, okay? So this right here is distal hinge. It's just the opposite, okay? Let's look at mesial distal crown angulation. It's common in treatment plans to see a lot of programmed change in the mesial-distal angulation of cuspid teeth. In this case, there's only 0.7 degrees. I recommend that you try to keep this number on cuspid teeth and posterior teeth under 2 degrees if you can, okay? So you're going to have to click it down. Well, how do you change the mesial-distal angulation change? You just do it the same way. You can see here that I'm adding it. It's up to 7 degrees. Now this is degrees, okay? And then you could go the opposite direction. So suppose you had a treatment plan that came back, and I do see this a lot, where there's almost like a little bit of the root's almost positioned too far distal, okay? There's, if you want to call it, mesial crown tip. And then you look at the 3D controls on that tooth and you see this. Well, then what I'm going to always do is I'm going to just click these little arrows and I'm going to try to get that. I'm going to get that close to 0 so there's no change. That's a difficult movement when you're taking the root apex on a long tooth like that and trying to move it mesial or distal and not changing the mesial or distal position of the tooth itself. Mesial, distal, crown angulation change. Okay, let's go back to an anterior tooth so we can look at this torque. By the way, let's level this a little more from my other exercise, looking with intrusion and extrusion. So if you look from the side, you can see that tooth number 9 is proclined a little bit. And there's some torque here. Well, there's a change in the inclination. It's inclined 2.2 degrees from where it was. So let's show you what torque is. This is torque right here. So you can see that torque is changing the buccal lingual inclination of the tooth, but the incisal edge, if we look more from the side, is not changing position. You're basically just repositioning the root apex of that tooth, and that's what torque is. So you can see torque, okay? The other movement that will change the buccal lingual inclination is called crown tip. Crown tip is a more predictable movement because you're not changing the position of the root apex. You don't have to worry about that the root apex is lagging behind, the movement of that apex is lagging behind the crown. It's simply the crown moving. If you had a situation where you saw the anterior teeth were flared out to start with, suppose this is the way it was to start with, and you say, "Oh, we don't like that." Well, your methods or your ways or your options, I should say, of correcting that would be either torque, but then you're leaving the incisal edge way out because there's a lot of excess overjet there, or you could go down and use crown tip movement like this. When you use the crown tip movement, you're improving its inclination, you're reducing the flaring, and you're also reducing overjet. Okay? And notice that IPR was added by the algorithms when I did that because you got to have space to be able to move these teeth lingual. And so it added the IPR automatically. Okay? Here's the multi-plane. I never use it. It's all in one. I don't recommend even learning how to use it, okay? So what I've done now is I've just gone through the whole control bar, and you can click on a tooth, as I was saying. You can look at all the movements and the values of those movements, and you can adjust those according to how you want them to be. And the lower the numbers, for posterior teeth especially, the more predictable your treatment plan will be. There's another way to view tooth movements, and that is using the tooth movement table right up here. And here's the tooth movement table. Notice I've highlighted number 10, and you can see it's highlighted here. It takes you right to that area. Here's all the movements, except it does not break down on inclination, buccolingual, torque versus crown tip. It's just telling the change in inclination, okay? So it's not perfect, but there's a lot of numbers. And it's difficult for me to just look at all those and figure out what to do. I just go tooth by tooth and I check tooth movements in a treatment plan. It only takes 5 minutes or so to do that. And I look at the values on the control bar and I adjust those for predictability as needed, okay? So hopefully this is helpful for you. I highly recommend you learn that tooth bar, practice with it. And by the way, if you're going to practice with that, let's just say, let me just get rid of this, okay? So I've done all this work and I go, oh no, now I've messed up my treatment plan because this is a real patient. All you do is you practice the 3D controls, you hit discard, and it'll take you right back to the very beginning. See? This looks a lot better, doesn't it? Because I didn't do all those movements, just to show you and change everything. So you can go ahead and practice, and then you can go ahead and hit discard, and that's a good way of learning.
Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. I trust it was helpful. Through the years, I've mentored hundreds of doctors from around the world through our mentorship services at InvisaligndOctors.com. For $49 a month membership fee, members have access to our online learning content and personalized mentorship services. To give you a taste for how these services can support your Invisalign work, I'm offering a complimentary 45-minute Zoom session. Whether you bring a case you currently are working on or simply have questions about treatment planning, together we'll make it a productive session tailored to your needs. Go to our website at InvisalignDoctors.com to learn more.